Well, here we are at week 3, and before we get started, one thing I'd like to do is show you how to turn in your homework. So this is very, very important because the Java program is going to create multiple files and folders and different things, and I want you to turn in just one basic file. So first thing we'll do is we go to Windows Explorer, and you are going to have on your C drive, if I can get to my C drive, I just got Windows 8 and I'm really struggling with it, so bear with me. So here's my C drive. Go to your users, go to your account, and you're going to see Workspace. So I double click on Workspace, and there you can see I have a whole bunch of different programs, that basically Java programs that have been written. So I'll just pick one, and for example, well, let me just open one up. So here is this one called Chohan. Open it up, you can see I've got a settings folder, I've got a bin folder, I've got a source folder. Inside of source is example, and chapter 6, Chohan, and you can see there it just keeps going on and on and on and on. So here's what you will do. So if you were going to turn in Chohan, you would do a right click on it, you will point to send to, and you will choose a compressed zip folder. Basically it's going to create a zip file. So you click that, and voila, there you have a zip file. This is the file that you would then turn in. So pretty simplistic. So go to your workspace, go to that particular program, do a right click on the folder, send to, compress zip folder, and boom, you now have just one file to turn in, and that will be the file you'll turn in. If you have any questions, again, make sure you contact me, email me, phone me, throw a rock through my window. No, don't do that. Okay, we'll see you down the road. Happy Java. Well, welcome to chapter 2. Very first thing we need to do is we need to go out to the P drive on Midstate. So if we go out to, if I can get there. Okay, so if we go out to the P drive and we look for CIS 113, and in there you will see 2013 Winter Web, and you click on that and you will see a zip file, CIS 113 zip. And what this will contain, this contains all of the files that we have within the book. All the examples in the book are going to be here. So go ahead and download that file, unzip it, and we've broken down by chapter. So when we get to it, let me kind of show you what I have all the files, but if you look, we can see all of the different files. There's chapter 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. So if I double click on, let's say, chapter 1, there we have just the file that we need. So very first thing we want to do is you should have already gone out and watched the Eclipse, how to download and install Eclipse, and you have Eclipse installed. So I have a shortcut on my desktop, so I double click on Eclipse. It will go ahead and bring that up. Again, it takes a few minutes to open because it's got a whole lot of different things that it's loading, and again I'll talk more in detail of what we'll see here in just a second. There's a lot of different files and folders, things called Java APIs. And what Java APIs are is, I want you to think of those as many little modules and programs that Java includes that gives you access to these little modules and things to go ahead and utilize within your program. We're going to talk about a few of these here in just a few minutes. We are going to start with, now when we first create a program, there's a thing called a main And a main is kind of a unique beast in that it's really only used in testing. Once you get out into the real world and create a program, you'll rarely ever use the main. The main, again, is just more for running the program on your computer to see basically what it looks like. Okay, so the very first thing it does is it defaults to users, your logon, and basically workspace. And I like to go ahead and just utilize that default. And I go ahead and now right here it says use this as a default and do not ask again. I would suggest not doing that, just for the fact that you may want to. I've had students who went ahead and created a workspace for chapter 1, a workspace for chapter 2, or a workspace for this particular program for that. I've had students who have taken the Android class and the Java class, and so they wanted to keep the two workspaces separate. Again, if you check that every time you open up Eclipse, it's going to not show this screen. So I would go ahead and not check that so that you can have a different workspace for wherever you need. So I choose that, I go ahead and click OK, and it's going to come up. And again, it's loading all the different things. It's loading the workbench, it's loading all those APIs, and it's putting everything into to our working memory right now. Chapter 1 talked about RAM. Well, it's loading all that stuff into RAM. So if we kind of take a look at Eclipse, we got a whole lot of different things going on here. Number one, we have what's called our Package Explorer, and this is kind of like Windows Explorer. It shows a tree view pane of our current program. Obviously, we don't have anything running right now. And right here is basically our workspace, and over here we have an outline and I'll give a demonstration what that looks like later. And down here we basically have some different things running. The main thing we're going to kind of deal with is our console. Now, what we are looking at right now, this is what's called a Java perspective. Now, when you talk about perspectives, think of this as the view that we are currently looking at. So this is kind of a Java development perspective. If you look up here in the upper right, it's got Java. Well, that's the perspective we're currently in. And right next to it is debug. I'll touch on that a little bit. But if I want to change it to a different type of perspective, I click on this link right here, and these are all the different perspectives that we have available to us. Java being the default, and that's probably what we're going to use 95% of the time in this class. Again, I'm going to show you a little bit on the debugging. So we'll leave it at that. I'm going to go ahead and click cancel here. So now we need to create a brand new program. So to do that, we click File, we point to New, and we come over here and we say Java Project. Now, Java Project has a whole lot of different components that are part of it. So the very first thing we need to do is give it a project name. Now, very important, I'm going to tell you when we start with capital letters and when we start with lowercase letters. In this case, we're going to start with an uppercase letter. We're going to call this uppercase hello space world. And it says use the default location, which happens to be our workspace. If I uncheck that, I can actually put it somewhere else if I wanted to. It says use an execution environment, JRE, which is a Java runtime environment, and the default right now is Java SE 1.7, and that's fine. That's just, we'll take the default there. We could use a different JRE. Maybe our program needs to use an older JRE. We could do that as well. Use the default JRE, which is currently JRE 7. That's fine. We could use that. But we're going to take the default here, and then the project layout. Create a separate folder for source files and class files. That's basically what we want. So we go ahead and click Next. At the next screen, it says this is basically how it's going to look. And that's right, we could go to projects, we could go to libraries. Again, this class is not going to get into all these different tabs here, but just realize those tabs are available, and if you kind of want to look into that, I would highly suggest going out to the internet and kind of getting an explanation of what each one of those tabs are. We go ahead and click Finish. Now we get done, we now have a project over here called Hello World. And if we expand that, we can see we have an SRC. That's an abbreviation for a source. And over here is our JRE system library. Now this is where all those APIs I talked about, that's kind of where they are housed. And if we click on those, they are basically all inside of these different jar files. And a jar file is kind of like a zip file, but it basically contains all of those APIs, all those little executable little things that are available to us within Java. So here they all are. We're not going to, now in the more advanced class, if we needed a specific process, we can actually go out to the internet and look for those processes that maybe somebody has written, and they'll actually provide a jar file that we can actually download and include into our JRE library. So pretty cool stuff, a lot of neat stuff that's out there today. But these contain just the basic Java for 1.7 that we are going to utilize. I'm going to collapse that. Now the source file, it's a folder. It contains nothing right now. Now this is kind of a main folder. This is just a main folder we're going to use. What I like for each of my students to do is create a separate folder inside of them. Now these folders aren't called folders, they're actually called packages. And to create a new package or new folder inside of the source, we are going to do a right click on the source. We are going to point to new, and down here we will have a package. Now this is where we do not use uppercase. The only time we use uppercase is when we're creating a new class and or project. Now if you wanted to have a folder inside of a folder inside of a folder, we know how to do that in Explorer. But to do that in a package, we separate the folders by periods. So a folder dot folder dot. So in this case I'm going to say example dot chapter 1 dot, no spaces are allowed, and we're going to call this hello world. Okay, so, and I'll show you what that does here in just a second. I go ahead and click finish, and you'll notice that I now have example.chapter.1.hello world. Okay, now to create a new program, otherwise known as a class file, it's going to have a .java extension on it. I do a right click on the package, I point to new, and I point to class and click. It's going to come up and say, okay, here's the folder, here's the package, what do you want to call this? Now this is a class file, it has extension of .java. This is where we have to start it with an uppercase. We call this hello world. Again, avoid spaces. Now in this case I want this to be a main program. Now main programs, I talked about that a few minutes ago. A main program is something that is executable by itself. If it's a different type of class file that's not a main, it's not executable. We cannot run it. Okay, so in this case I want this to be a main, and down here I have this box that says public static void main. That's the one I want. I put a check mark in there. It's public. I click finish. I'll talk about public in a second. And there we have our Java program. Okay, so if we look at it, it says, hey, this name is hello world.java. It's in package example.chapter1.hello world. Now let me show you what that means here. If I go to my workspace, and here's my workspace, I will see that I have a hello world folder. I double click on it. There is my source folder. Now we've seen that. We know where that's at. We double click on that. Look, there's my example. I double click that, and there is chapter 1. Remember example.chapter1. I should see hello world after that folder. Sure enough, there it is. So that's when I created example.chapter1.hello world. I double click on that, and there you see my .java program. Okay. So now we can kind of see how things are kind of falling into place. So